work, just.
You're right.
Crisis averted. Well, you know, you can hear those things. And
I didn't know that.
Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, February 13th, 2017. I'd ask that everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins?
Here.
Mr. Batanti?
Here.
Mr. Servil?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Verkust?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting and public hearing minutes of January 23rd, 2017, and the workshop minutes of February 6th, 2017, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,455,194.32.
Motion to,
Approval of the November 2016 and January 2017 revenue and expenditure reports, and approval to purchase water main break repair clamps in the amount of $7,346.30 from Ferguson Water Works to restock department supplies for water main break repairs.
make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the bills in the amount of $1,455,194.32.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Support from Mr. Servio. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, I'm asking, or actually the Water and Sewer Department has asked that item B be removed. We've heard some good news about the bypass pumping at Cole Ridge and North Point. It's gonna be less duration than we thought, and we might still wanna look at bypass pumps in the future, but not at this time.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda of removing item B.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, support by Mr. Batanti. Discussion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is announcements. I do have a couple of announcements. Due to the ongoing bypass pumping at the site of the 15-mile road sanitary sewer collapse, residents are encouraged to continue their water conservation efforts until, well, at least a few more weeks. There's a full press release from Macomb County Department of Public Works on the township's website. Any little thing you can do helps. Perhaps altering, using dishwater, maybe use a few more paper plates if you can, or visit a lot of your friends' houses that are on septic, whatever you can do. Good excuse to crash, your buddies, say, hey, we're staying for the night. The library has several events on their calendar. You can visit their website, www.htlibrary.org. And of course, you can also find information about all the township events. You can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445, or visit our website at harrison-township.org. Are there any other announcements?
Ken, on that same note about the conserving water, perhaps maybe the residents may have read that we were gonna do a bypass off of the interceptor, no longer gonna do that.
That's correct.
I think that means that we're more critical. They need to keep on doing things, cause that was like maybe as much as 7% of all of flow.
Yeah, it was, even a little bit greater in that area, I think, but you're right, we will not be doing bypass pumping to Mount Clemens.
But it seemed to be, if they think that it's gonna be safe without it, it's fiscally responsible, cause it's saving $500,000 that they would have had to spend for 2 weeks or a month, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. No, that's very true. In the end, the financial analysis was a bit of a challenge, and there was also some question as to how much wet weather flow would have been able to be redirected, and that's ultimately where the need is. You're absolutely right. We need to continue our conservation. The worst place that any of that sewer could go would be in the homes and basements of the residents of Macomb County. But the second worst place it could go is into the river and into our lake. So if we all do our part to reduce that water usage, we can, so far, we've been successful avoiding that, both with a pretty wet weather event and the catastrophic Super Bowl incident, so. Any other comments?
I do have one. Tomorrow, February 14th, is the last day to pay your winter taxes without penalty. You can still pay all of the taxes, summer and winter, through February 28th. Starting March 1st, the delinquent taxes go to the county.
So if you haven't been in, do it tomorrow.
Unless you want to pay a penalty.
Nah, nobody wants to do that. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on with our next item, item C1 from the clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yes, we've received an application from Ace Pyro LLC for a fireworks display at a wedding at Macrae Harbor on Saturday, February 25th. They've completed the state's application, provided us a certificate of insurance in the amount of $10 million with listing the township as an additional insured. So all the necessary paperwork's in order. The fire chief has reviewed the permit and has no objections to the plan. There will be a fire department inspection the day of the event, just to ensure compliance of the event. In order to move forward with that, to allow them to do it, we would just need a motion to execute the permit for fireworks for the wedding at Macrae Harbor.
So moved. Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. York.
I just
Any
have a quick
discussion?
question. Do you need
Yes, sir.
I don't know anything about this license. Do you need a license to light off fireworks?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's included, his license.
No, I'm saying like the operator.
Yeah.
They have the permit is in,
It's all in the packet there.
Frederick
Oh,
Schloss's
I was
license and
looking at
permit.
Yeah, they're through ATF, and then there's something
Oh,
through the state as
okay.
well, I think, so.
I have a question as well. Do we, and maybe it was in here and I didn't see it, do we charge a fee for that?
No,
So I guess just me for future thought, if we have to go through the process of sending somebody out to, we have labor involved in this.
yeah, and the state law about fireworks is really weird, and they like to take control away from the locals, but we'll check and see if we can.
I'm just thinking for
When,
some,
when it's come up in the past, so it's important to understand, at least historically, the only application we receive is from Lake St. Clair Metro Park on an annual and recurring
right.
basis. And in fact, even in the, so we'll say, well, okay, but what about the fireworks that occur 4th of July at Macrae and Belmar? Well, those are done from a barge, jurisdiction is different, so we don't do anything for that. Even at Macrae, in most cases, when there is
There's
a
been
wedding.
several weddings that have
Yeah.
done fireworks, but they
Right.
shoot from the water.
The difference is that, for every wedding you have in February, you probably have 2 or 3 in June and May and August, and basically when you have open water. So this is unique in the sense that it came at a time of the year when they can't do it from the water. So these requests are, this is the first request we've had that wasn't another public entity.
right, okay.
So I think if it
understood.
became habitual, then I
Sure.
think we would take
Just
another
want-
look at it.
I guess that would be my point, is instances where we might regularly have involvement or have to expend manpower, that we should have some sort of assessment. But
Yeah,
understood.
and for whatever it's worth, the folks that are doing any of the labor are people that are on staff. There's no additional labor,
Right.
right? So the day of, or for these things, we're not paying overtime for someone to do the
Good.
work.
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I got a couple questions. On this application, I noticed that the license expires on April 1st, 2017. I would assume that will be updated.
What,
February-
February 25th is the fireworks, so,
Oh, is it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah.
So the fallout zone responsibility falls on who?
They've made a contract with Macrae Harbor for that work, and then we'll inspect that it's done in compliance.
We're no way on the hook for anything that's damaged because
Nope.
we've.
That's why we're on that additional insured. We
We're
actually
named.
sent a copy of the insurance paperwork to our insurance company, and part of what they do is to make sure that certificate is valid and,
Okay.
it's not just a photocopy that somebody typed on the bottom. So-
Pretty big bond too, isn't there?
And in order for that
$10 million.
insurance company to be valid, they have to maintain those fallout zones.
Okay.
Right, yeah, and they had identified that there were actually, boats that were, you know, shored up there, that they had to relocate in order to do this, so, you know, that the bride and groom are assuming a certain amount of money to do these fireworks, that's for sure. Or somebody is.
I don't know if they know, maybe we should.
1,200
surprise.
shells is that's a big to do.
Yep, so,
Thank you.
all right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. York to approve the execution of the permit for fireworks to Ace Pyro LLC for a wedding at Macrae Harbor scheduled on February 25th, 2017. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, also from the clerk's office, item C2, Mr. Witt.
Yes, Board. At our regular meeting on January 23rd, the Board introduced zoning ordinance number 308, which amends the Charter Township Harrison zoning ordinance Articles 5, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 21, which addresses accessory buildings, porches, central air conditioning units, front yard setbacks, planning commission approval required for community accessory structures, non-conforming lots, zoning board of appeal authority and definition of boathouses. The board had proposed a change made to the mechanical equipment section, and those changes have been made by the township attorney. The building official is prepared
In conjunction
in
with.
conjunction with the building official, yeah. Based on the feedback from the board, there's a drawing on the back. The planner is going to, you know, turn that into an actual drawing that can get inserted in the ordinance as we go through the codification process. But the drawing there is to help people look and know which areas are appropriate for air conditioning placement. The only addition to this drawing that was made was a label to the, if you're looking at the drawing, it would be the right side, just to clarify that that would be the, you know, in the event there's a non-conforming less than, you know, it also defines that, just for clarification's sake.
So I'll make that, I'll make a motion to adopt perfecting amendments to zoning ordinance number 308. Publish a notice of adoption and that the next full text may be reviewed in the clerk's office during business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Tominello, support by Mr. Batkins. Discussion, board members.
Yeah, I just wanna say, thanks to Adam. Actually, the way this is bulleted out is, very clear. And
And
I think it'll,
I wish I could take credit for that, but that was Mr. Condon putting that
okay,
together.
well, that's great. Well, thanks to Mr. Condon. and,
We threw in the 6-foot thing,
And
so.
for you to follow up on that, appreciate that. I think that really, clarifies, any discrepancies.
I talked to the fire chief after we had the last meeting about this, and he told me that he did check into it, and there are no rules or laws that he knows of that would prohibit us from putting mechanical equipment in the non-buildable side yard. But I said, you do have an opinion about it? He said, yes, I do. I asked him if he would please put that in writing and submit it to the board. I don't see anything, so I assume the chief didn't follow through with that. But that said, I'm not gonna beat this to death, but I still feel that it's the wrong thing to do to put this equipment in the non-buildable side yards. It's an encroachment onto the neighbors, and I think it could create a problem sometime in the future, depending on fences and bushes and things of that nature that are on the adjacent property. But more importantly, that's Section 5, Article 505, and then on the very next page, we have, or is it 2? We have another ordinance here that says that the houses must be 12 feet apart. And I talked about this too. I think that if there's an adjacent house that isn't 6 feet away, then you have to build further than 6 feet away when you may be on a small lot. I consider that a taking. But if we're gonna look at the idea that we need space between the houses, putting a generator that's a big piece of equipment in between the houses, and that's definitely encroaching on the space between the houses. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to this, and when the vote comes, I am going to vote no.
Okay.
So,
I would concur with not putting, and I've brought this up, the noise factor when you have new homes and you know, you have these first floor bedrooms. Somebody puts a generator or a air conditioner, you know, 3 feet from your window, depending on the house, the way the house is orientated, you know, that would drive me nuts. If my neighbor put a generator 5 feet from my window, trying to sleep at night, you're just not gonna be able to do it. That's why I always been against, putting them in the side yard, but that's all the comment I have. One other, brief comment, on page, I don't know, I guess it's item K.
Okay.
On, I guess about the 5th page.
Section 7?
Do you wanna put anything on here, to give somebody an extension or leave some room that they can go back to the zoning board of appeals to approve an extension if their project, couldn't get done, or are we just gonna make it just a finite? I'm just bringing it up now since we have them here.
Pulling
right?
a permit's a pretty low bar to
Right.
continuing the
Okay.
variance. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
Okay, so
that-
we can use the permit process to,
Well, that's what it says. If you come in
Right.
11 months and 30 days and pull the permit, your clock is different.
okay, that's fine. I just, you know, sometimes people, you know, maybe the fault of their own, no fault of their own, they end up, you know, contractor says I can do it in 10 months, and then the contractor, you know, biffs on you or something, and you can't get a new contractor to get your garage or whatever they're doing, a house. All right, no problem.
Folks still have the opportunity to come back to the zoning board, and if the argument is reasonable enough, this board has the ability to waive any additional fees.
Yeah, I don't wanna see somebody have to pay $400 to,
well, the
Come back
wording,
if-
as long as Darren brought that up, the wording, the way I read this is that they need to finish that in the 12 months.
I would disagree with that, and I think we discussed this at the last meeting, but I
Yeah.
understand that that's how you read it.
Well, it says erection or alteration is obtained within such period, and such erection or alteration is started and proceeds to completion in accordance with the terms of such permit.
Right, so if you pull the permit and you fail to complete it,
It starts and it proceeds.
Well, most people pull the
Maybe,
permit right away.
maybe the word "to," if it were toward, would mean something, so that you're moving toward completion. Might mean, it's a matter of semantics. I think if the purpose was to say that a building permit for erection is started and completed, then I would say it's very clear, but it doesn't say completed, it proceeds to completion, or toward might be, right? The idea being, the flip side is we don't want someone to say, the day after, we pulled a permit and we're doing nothing, we're not taking any action, and they cease to move forward. So, it's certainly an area that could be legally, could be litigated if someone said, well, no, I was proceeding, how do you define that? You know, well, I was
Well-
proceeding, well, how fast?
Normally, these people are on a fast track to, if they ask for a variance, they've got a contractor lined up and they want to get going right away, they pull the permit. The permit's only good for 12 months. It's at the discretion of the building official whether or not he extends that permit or not. That's all
state
Darren was
law.
pointing out, there is no latitude there, and I guess that we have to leave this up to our boards and our
Employees.
officials, but, you know, when we talked about this before, we said that's what zoning board of appeals is for, and that's what I feel the proper venue would have been for these placing equipment, mechanical equipment in the side yard. If there was a darn good reason why they needed to put it there, I'm sure that as a zoning board of appeal member, I would entertain that, and I'm not saying I would approve it, but I would look hard at it and, possibly even construct a motion to approve. But it seems like we're doing it backwards because we said we want to streamline things, but at the same time, some of these other changes are causing people to maybe have to go to the zoning board of appeals that they didn't have to before.
Well, it's important to understand that the modifications that are before us, not the 12-foot that you pointed out, that is not a modification. But the other areas of modification are just as we called perfecting amendments, or really amendments brought forth as a result of utilizing these new zoning ordinance for a period of a year or two and saying, hey, here's where we tended to really see repeat issues. Here's how we think we could refine those. This may not be the last word on this, but as it stands right now, there's a perception that this would help to reduce some of the problems that we've encountered in the past without creating additional
Okay, you
problems.
said the 12-foot, the one that I cited about the 12-foot minimum space?
Yeah.
That was in October of 15
Correct.
change, correct?
Right.
All right,
It's
as a
not
Z-
it's not a part of this.
As a
amendment.
ZBA member, I have the book, but I don't read every ordinance in that book. When we have a case before us that, you know, requires that I review that particular section of the ordinance, then I do.
Sure.
I was not aware that that change was in there until it came here as a perfecting amendment.
Right, but my point is it's not before us as an amendment, is all I was clarifying. That 12-foot has been there since October of 15, and to that point, it hasn't, we're not changing it today because our experience of using it for the last year or two hasn't generated a lot of concerns or complaints. But these other areas that we're tweaking the best we can to reflect what the needs have been over the last year or two.
My point was simply this, Ken. If someone does run into this problem, I concur that this is probably an unlikely scenario. But if someone does, you're putting the onus on them to go and try to get permission to do what they should have been able to do without going to zoning board of appeals. You're turning the tables on them. And that was my problem with it. I understand at the end of the day that you don't want houses 6 feet apart, you know, if possible, but.
So I just have one other quick question to explain this diagram. Is this distance in the blue area, is that 3 feet? I'm a little confused at why.
It's 6 feet, 6
Right,
feet.
right,
from-
so it's 6 feet from the lot line, right? I
Correct.
see that, right, I get that. But then, what's this other 6
That's 6
foot?
feet from the front of the structure, or in that case, the rear of the structure.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
I
here's-
get-
so
okay,
here's
I
what
see.
we're
I-
saying.
I get
Corner,
it.
right?
I just was looking at it screwy, I'm good.
Yeah, and
I'm good.
the argument being
Alright.
that if you put that in the side yard, but you put it at the extreme rear edge of the envelope, well, now it kind of projects diagonally into your neighbor's yard, so if it needs to be in the side yard, and you wish for it to be there for, you know, for aesthetics, for noise, for whatever that is, keep it away from the rear edge of the structure so that it doesn't project, it kind of stays between the properties. And also keep in mind that the image that we see here is definitely not the norm, where you have all these homes nestled that closely. I mean, there are certain exceptions to that.
So if I'm looking at this properly, you would really need 6 feet from the lot line, and then just follow me here, whatever the manufacturer's recommendation is for that piece of equipment, so you might need another 2 feet from the house, plus so you probably need 8 or 9 feet in the side yard to put one of these, no?
That would be true if we go back.
Yeah, if you have a setback, a normal size setback that you're meeting.
Conforming lot.
Conforming
Oh,
setback,
yes, yes.
then yes, it would need that, it would need 6 feet plus whatever additional space.
Plus your setback.
Right, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying, you
Right,
need the
right,
6 feet plus
Yeah,
the
so it'd be
whatever, how big the
10 or 11
item
The
is.
envelope. for
You'd be
the
like
item.
10 or 11 feet or
Plus,
something
plus
like
you
that.
need, normally they recommend, I don't know, 12 inches, 18 inches off the
yeah.
house or whatever.
And that's what's happening in a lot of our new building, today. Those ordinances and side yard setbacks are being followed, because they're conforming lots.
That's the problem, though. The biggest problem is on non-conforming lots that are under 70 foot of width, because chances are, the houses are pushing the maximum buildable area. And those are the ones that they don't have to conform to that map. They can be anywhere up to the lot line, theoretically. That was my objection, not this one. The drawing that you have there, I don't object to that as much, because you're not going into that 6 foot of non-buildable, although I still think that it's a problem. Mr. York mentioned generators. I don't think generators are the problem.
I don't either. I think when generators are running, my whole neighborhood's pretty noisy, let alone whether it's outside my window. It's probably mine that's noisy
And
outside my
that
window.
neighbor's probably gonna wanna put an extension cord from my generator to his house.
Right, we can certainly argue that it's a nuisance to hear a generator running, but the greater nuisance is no electricity. I think in times of power outages, I can say when we had, I don't remember what year it was, '02, or when we had the big brownout, I remember how far back, maybe it was 90-something,
2003.
Well,
2003. At that time, I think our neighborhood collectively spent more time socializing than they did in the 10 years I'd lived there prior, but people came out and, so frequently you see someone running a cord from one house to another if a fellow does have a generator.
I did talk to some experts from Generac since we brought this up last time. What they told me was that some communities have ordinances that say that the exercising mode can only be done at certain hours and certain days.
Right,
That would be a good thing to maybe add in there, weekdays in the daylight,
right.
daytime.
You could,
or-
but we could address that with our noise nuisance ordinance.
You
If that
pro-
happened,
you
I could.
program this and it only runs for 5 minutes once a week.
Correct, right. But we could address that. If somebody said, well, I'm just too lazy to go out and change the program on my generator, I could say, well, I can give you there's no reason that at 3 AM your generator has to exercise. So I could address that through existing ordinances if it became a problem. Because you could say, hey, look,
And by
set
the
this up
way,
for
I
another time.
heard some chuckles over there. They do have a 20-amp circuit that's accessible unless you put a lock on it. You can lift it up and plug it in there. So, because I have a 22 kW on my side yard. It's
Well,
not,
I'll remember that. If I go out, I'll know where to get 20 amps.
We can go park our RVs.
you better
at the
have
girls'
a
house
heck
and
of a
plug 'em
long
in.
cord.
I could probably run my air
You
with
got
20
about
amps.
5,000 feet of cord?
All right. Any further comment? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Tominella with support by Mr. Badkins to adopt the perfecting amendments to the zoning ordinance number 308 and to publish a notice of adoption, and that the full text may be reviewed in the clerk's office during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 AM to 4:30 PM. All those in favor, signify.
Roll call, Mr. Supervisor.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. I was thinking, man, how come someone doesn't have a roll call? That's right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Witt?
Mr. Tominella,
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Servil?
No.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes.
And just for clarification, the ordinance is effective 7 days upon publication, 7 days after publication.
Publication. All right, good. Okay, next item, D1. Board members, one of the furnaces right next door to us in the Rosso Hall Buffet Edition, which is right here next to us, is not operational. The space is designed for 2 heating and cooling units, and we have had only one functioning since I've been supervisor. I propose the replacement of the secondary furnace unit and recommending a motion to purchase the unit from Aero Heating and Cooling in the amount of $5,800. We did get a couple of prices. I can say that for any of the work that we've seen in the past, gosh, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, let's say, Aero has been very competitive. We did reach out to 2 firms that are both located in Harrison Township, both very reputable firms, but Aero was the low bidder, and this reflects, I think, a similar price that we had paid for the other unit to be replaced a couple years ago.
Make a motion to purchase a replacement furnace for the Rosso Hall Buffet Edition from Aero Heating and Cooling in the amount of $5,800.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Batanti. Discussion, board members.
Yeah, I wanted to point out one thing. You have 2 estimates here, and the other estimate says includes curb adapter and manual damper and new April air programmable thermostat. I don't see that included in here, especially if there is a adapter required.
Yep, so
I'd like to make sure that this is an all-inclusive price.
Yeah, so I can tell you that within weeks, maybe months of becoming supervisor back in 2011, I began this process on the one unit that ultimately, both units have ultimately failed. We've replaced one. Early on, I'd ask the same thing. I can say I don't know. I won't speak for this whole board because I don't know if everybody knows what a curb adapter was, but I certainly didn't know. Simply stated, rooftop units, if we just consider, let's say we just look at that unit as having a front and a rear, or a north, south, east, and west orientation. Let's say that the ABC Furnace Company may happen to have their intake of fresh air, or basically cold air return, in the northwest quadrant, and the output of conditioned air in the southeast quadrant, the electrical hookup in the southwest, and the, some other connection or hookup in the other corner, or the drain, let's say, for example. But the XYZ company may have all of that rotated 90 degrees, meaning their intake and their output and their electrical hookups and their gas hookups could be in different locations. So in order to say, well, I'm gonna sell this company, this furnace, but the previous furnace was a different manufacturer, there's adapters that basically go in place, or little boxes that have the ability to say, well, I can always replace this brand with another brand, but I'll have to put in this curb adapter, and it's gonna have a little box, almost a sort of a riser, and it's gonna have ductwork that redeflects the things so that you can connect it to the existing ductwork and gas lines and electrical that's there. And it's my opinion, from talking to different folks, that in some cases, I think in most any case, if you can do the research on what the existing unit is, you can find a manufacturer that meets that layout, and you avoid the cost of the curb adapter, and also some potential loss in efficiency, because you're not just connecting right to your ductwork and flowing. So you don't need a curb adapter if you put a model and a style that lines up.
I know all of what you said, but.
And I'd said I didn't
what
know if
I'm
all the
pointing-
board
yeah,
members
What I'm
knew.
pointing out is that it's not spelled out. I just wanna make sure that there's not any upcharge, because after they get there, whoops, we have to go fabricate something, and that's extra charge.
Sure.
And now, the other thing is that, I do know residential, I'm not sure what the commercial, energy code is, but with residential, when you replace a furnace, they're forced to put a better thermostat that has, a programmable thermostat, whether the homeowner wants it or not. Elderly people sometimes beg the furnace guy not to put that in there because they don't know how to program it. But unfortunately, they do, but I don't know if that's the case on commercial or not. So we may be getting something, I don't know how much the value of the thermostat is of the other person, but it doesn't say that, Arrow is putting a new stat in there or not.
Right. I think a programmable thermostat could be had for as little as $30. I know the curb stop is not an issue because, or the curb adapter is not an issue. I was merely explaining that to some other board members who may not be aware of that, because there was
And
a
I'm
time
not
I didn't know it.
I'm not accusing Arrow of doing anything wrong. I'm just
No, no.
saying it's not spelled out, and maybe they didn't figure it was necessary to spell it out.
Sure, and I can speak to that. This quote, this price, and the scope of work is exactly what they did to the other rooftop unit. So you figure the configuration of where in and out and gas and electricity was for one model. I mean, I'm sure originally when it was built, they put two of the identical units there. So we're doing the same thing we did a couple years ago when the other one went.
But sometimes the curbs actually rust out too, though, even if it does fit.
Right, and this was
Those-
not.
Those are put onto the deck, and then the built-up roof is on top of that, so.
Yep, this does not, the previous installation did not require a curb adapter, and this is basically a repeat of the same installation. So it went smooth, and it was, he did it for the price he quoted. There was no, I can't think of a time when he's given us an upcharge or some
Okay,
increase.
well, I've just pointed it out, and if you come back and say, well, there was an upcharge, then I'm gonna say I questioned that at the time, that's all.
Well, I can't tell you that there isn't something unknown, but there isn't one for a curb adapter. This unit doesn't require a curb adapter, and the last time the same installation occurred, there was no additional charge.
Does he have to pull a permit for that?
We do require them to pull permits, just so we can inspect the work and make sure it's done to code and to our satisfaction. Why pay those guys that know exactly what it should be done without using them?
Yeah, that's right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Batanti to purchase a replacement furnace for the Rosso Hall Buffet Edition from Aero Heating and Cooling in the amount of $5,800. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item D2, in the board packet, board members, I just indicated we received some information. Since we approved the budget, we've learned some more about the fire budget for 2017. I've got itemized some budget line adjustments that I'm proposing to the board, and I have them numbered, kind of a close-up of the budget, pages 1, 2, and 3. So I'll walk through those. You see at the top, 2017 budget approved, 2017 budget proposed. These would be anywhere where you see something in the proposed column, this is the proposed change. A retiree health contribution, this is to the savings for future benefit. We certainly have a liability that would suggest a contribution greater than $72,000. But at this point, I think we can afford $72,000, so I'm proposing an increase to that line item of $60,000. Next change is the employer pension cost. The approved budgeted amount for the employer pension cost was $880. We recently received the tentative or preliminary actuarial report for the fire pension. The actuary has proposed or indicated $79,500 and some odd dollars per month for the contribution. I'm proposing to round that up to an even $80,000 times 12 months for a contribution of $960,000. Next page, page 2, next item would be dispatch. We had thrown in a figure of $125,000 for the outside services for dispatch, and later we had indicated the potential from some startup. I'm proposing we just combine that to the $247,409, which is the total amount for 2017 that this board approved for startup as well as the administration. Then on page 3, we had a placekeeper for heart monitors and for the ambulance, but we have a finite number now for both. We have a number for the heart monitors, that's the amount approved, an amount for the ambulance, and then I'm proposing, because we did execute the contract with the additional 40-hour person, we need a truck. I mean, we know we're gonna spend something, we may not spend $30,000. That's an estimate at this point. If we adopt all of these, and we still have the understanding that we do anticipate the need to purchase some water rescue equipment, we would still finish the year as projected with an $82,000 surplus or equipment reserve that would go in there. I can also say that for so far, we typically staff for 27 firefighters. We're waiting for the March 1st list from civil service before we might look to hire someone, but as it stands right now, we're at 26. So we're gonna be a good 3 to 4 months into this year, one firefighter short, and that'll probably result in some level of savings to the budget. So from what little we know about 2017, we're already, we should be already in the black, so to speak, with the projected numbers. So I don't know if there's discussion or a motion.
Well,
Make a motion to approve the agenda, the proposed amendments.
All right,
Support?
all right,
Yep.
good. So a motion by Mr. York, and support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion?
the only question I had was, it's, going by memory, which very well could be wrong, it seemed like we didn't have $300,000 extra, and that's the reason why we were spreading the ambulance out over 5 years and some other things we were doing. So you're telling us the $298,000 is there?
Yeah, the bottom line number, the 206,980 number of $380,925, that's from the approved budget as it was adopted.
But
I
the
actually
changes
have it
add
here.
up to another 300,000 unless I'm looking at something.
298.
Right.
Right. So that leaves us now equipment, if we adopt this, we'll have 82,000 in equipment
Okay.
reserve instead of 380,000.
So we're getting down to a little over $82,000 left in theoretically.
Of a surplus at the end of the year. Right.
But I think as Mr. Burkess pointed out, we're already a little ahead of that with the fact that we haven't had the one hire. So there'll be something in addition to that, but there's always something that comes up anyway.
Yeah, there's
I mean,
changes
you know,
either
Well,
way.
apparatus was
Without-
mentioned, but
Yeah, yeah, but at least at this point, those purchases that we anticipate are budgeted in here, and we have 82,000. And I don't believe the vehicle is a $30,000 vehicle that we're looking at, but I'd rather, again, be conservative. And again, there are other line items in here that we are likely to finish the year, you know, not spending. So this is an adopted budget. But those would be the proposed changes.
So just to make observation, I have the budget here that we originally approved. And the net difference between revenue and expenditures in the original approved budget was $380,925.
Yep. So that I'd shown,
Yeah,
although
that's
that was
the
shown
last
as a
page here.
surplus.
I see that, but just, they're
But
getting
this is
down
the-
close to it,
Don't, I agree,
yeah.
but you were asking about the original budget, and there was $380,000 and $825.
Well, I was playing attorney there, you know, attorneys don't ask questions that they don't have the answer to. I just wanted it to be public, that's all.
Sure. All right. Further discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the adjustments to the fire budget as proposed on the attached budget spreadsheet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda, item D3. Board members, our part-time plumbing and mechanical dual certified inspector is unable to maintain his current hourly workload at the township. Section 2.15 of our policies identifies an hourly rate of 25 to 36 per hour for a part-time mechanical inspector. I'm asking for authorization to post and advertise for a part-time mechanical inspector in the building department for approximately 16 hours per week at a rate of $30 to $32 per hour. So the, the current dual certified inspector suggested in maybe almost 10 to 1 mechanical over plumbing inspections. That's the greatest demand that he has. He is a part-time employee with Harrison Township. The other community that he works in has recently appointed him to be their building official, which has put in some additional demand on his time. And he's also indicated the fact that he, you know, has just based on his age and willingness to continue to work and ability to retire and those factors, I won't prognosticate on his age, but he says, I probably got a couple years to go. We have not seen too many dual certified inspectors available.
Correct.
So we're not, even though we've been fortunate to have dual certified inspectors for the last few inspectors, when Mr. Lowe chooses to retire, we are not likely going to be able to replace him with a dual certified inspector. However, it's also worth noting that we're seeing a little bit of increase. So it would be my suggestion to reflect the reduction in the hours that Mr. Lowe can give us, to establish a relationship with a part-time mechanical inspector. Obviously, those hours vary during the time of the year and that sort of a thing. And if that situation works out and things are working good, we may find ourselves only needing to replace someone on the plumbing side in the event that Mr. Lowe does retire in a couple of years, as he might have projected or suggested. But at this point, this, I guess I'd say, increase in the labor force is going to be met, at least in part, by some decrease on the amount of hours that Mr. Lowe will be working. But also, it's in response to the fact that there's a demand for a mechanical inspection. He's struggling right now to keep up with the mechanical inspections in the township.
So just to be clear, he's willing to, for the foreseeable future, to do all of our plumbing inspections, but he'd like to get rid of the heating and gas piping.
I would say-
Basically is what the mechanical is, and boilers.
Right, I would say that's for the most part, that's true, but I think that he anticipates, based on prior years' workloads, and he's done this for several years for us, that he'd be doing all of the plumbing and some of the mechanical. But he's not able
Okay.
to continue to keep up with the mechanical, so he'd be doing some of the mechanical work.
Just for those that don't know it, for whatever reason, the state of Michigan allows a contractor for electrical or heating to be an inspector in another community, but they don't allow an acting plumber, an active plumber, to be an inspector in another community. Why, I
It doesn't
don't
make
know.
sense.
Well, I don't know that I'm not sure that that's the case. I think they have to put their license in escrow.
I said an active plumber.
Right,
You know, my particular plumber that I've used for years used to do a fill-in at this community in the past. But then the state law changed. Now, I don't understand why they singled them out, but that's the reason why you don't find too many dual, because a lot of these guys are active, especially if they're working part-time. They, you know, like our electrical inspector is an active contractor.
right. You could say, for a portion of the day, I'm gonna do inspections, and for the portion of the day, I'm gonna act as a contractor, and do actual work for someone else in the metropolitan area. You can't do that as a plumber. You can't, you can either be an inspector or you can be a contractor, but you can't wear both hats. So that's what makes some of this sort of difficult.
So what happened there was somebody was a plumber and an inspector was inspecting his own work, and somebody said, got in
But-
trouble. That's probably where that law came from.
Could be, but you could say that for every trade.
Yeah, you
could say
can't,
that
you
for-
can't work in your own.
But normally when you
wherever
have
you're-
something like that,
You're
it's
doing
because it
inspections, you
was-
can't do work there.
Right, right. But our building inspectors could, right now, do work. If they have a builder's license, they're allowed to do that. And likewise, our electrical inspector can do work, so.
So I do have a question.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we just make a motion to, we have our 25 to 36 hours. Why do we want to just go out right away and say, 30 to 32 dollars an hour? I mean.
Good
I mean,
question.
that's great if it's 30, I don't care, right? But you know me, I always like to start low. I don't like to tag somebody, right?
Yep.
So I start with, I'll give you 28, you know, you can feel it out.
Right.
And if I get 28, great. And,
Yeah.
and if I have to go to 30 or 32, I have a more experienced guy, I'm fine to do that. I just personally don't like throwing it out there when you have the range, because I don't know who we're gonna get yet.
Absolutely. So that number is based on two things. It's based on the request of what other communities are paying for part-time inspectors, number one. And number two, it's based on what we're paying our current part-time electrical inspector. We can advertise any number that you might want, but I don't think we're gonna get someone for less than 30, and I wouldn't propose to pay more than 32.
Mr. Lowe is limited to 1,200 hours a year, correct? Maximum.
So that's, I'm not certain of that, but let's
I
say,
mean,
yeah.
that's union rules, isn't it? Okay, so if you're saying most of his work is plumbing, then let's say 80% of it's plumbing.
Oh, no, most of it's mechanical. Right now, what he's saying is it's all,
10 to 1.
his answer was, he said right now he's doing 10 to 1 mechanical to
Oh, I
plumbing.
misunderstood.
Yep, I'm sorry.
All right, so,
But he's doing, his rate at dual certification is 36. So Mr. Lowe is working at a rate of 36 per hour. So, I can advertise another number. What I looked at is I wouldn't want this board to think, our policy says 25 to 36. At this point, based on, I guess I'd say market demand, if you will, I'm not gonna get somebody that's gonna do this work for 25 bucks an
so
hour.
what you're talking about is possibility of maybe 1,000 hours a year maximum, correct? I mean, roughly speaking. So,
Yeah, probably less than that, 16 hours, 50 a week, 50 weeks.
well, if you ramp up, once you hire this person, if they take over from Doug Lowe, you're not gonna lower their fee. So if they're making $30 an hour for 1,000 hours, they're gonna get $30,000 for it. And if it was down to 25, you'd save $5,000.
Right, but you'd have to have somebody who says, yes, I'm willing to work that.
Correct,
Someone who's gonna come in working 16 hours a week as an inspector is most likely working in another community as an inspector, and they're gonna look to what that rate is, so,
or
Understand.
they're,
I
or
don't
they're
know.
completely retired and,
yep.
I don't ever have a problem paying market rate, don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
just don't like to go out high, right?
Right.
That's just me.
No, and yeah, and I didn't perceive that I'm going high. I guess what I'm saying is from what I could prepare, I wouldn't wanna come in and say 25 to 32, and then say, yeah, well, the guy said he'll do it for 30. Then you'd say, well, why'd you say 25? I don't mind, we can post 25 to 32, but
Do we even have to post a salary? or, you know, just.
I think typically you say what the hourly rate is,
We
yeah.
might get a guy that's 36, I don't know.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, I'm coming to you saying I'm not going to go to my other single certified inspector and say, you only get 32, but we hired this fella at 36. At this point, I'm not
Oh,
gonna
that's a good
advertise
point.
for
Okay,
more
that's a
than
good
what
point. All right,
the current
yeah.
guy. I got a dual guy at 36, I got a single guy at 32. To me,
Well, then I'd
this is
hire the
single.
guy at 30 because the other guy's been with us for a while and gotta
Which
give
is
him
why-
give him a
That
little
was-
bit more on the
That was the
bone, right?
conversation behind
Right.
the 30.
Right, right. But ultimately, I don't look at you and say, well, you're better or worse because you're electrical or mechanical.
No, I-
They're each legitimate trades with their own inherent set of skills. So I'm saying, I'm not likely to say, well, I pay this guy 32, but you only get 25. He's gonna say, well, that's bull crap, I'm doing the same thing, it's just a different trade.
I
Yeah, but
remember,
that guy's been with us for 5 years.
More than that.
Yeah.
I remember the discussion when you were hiring Doug, that, he was working for another community already, and we were saying that maybe if we're gonna pay for both licenses, because we pay for the upkeep of the license plus the license, if they don't need that from us, then you can pay the higher range, and if we do, you pay a little bit less.
Yeah.
Guess we have to leave it to your discretion at the end of the day.
Make a motion to advertise an interview for a part-time mechanical inspector in the building department for approximately 16 hours per week at a rate of $30 to $32 per hour with no benefits.
And this obviously would come back before the board, it doesn't say so, but it's understood, we're only asking to post and advertise, post to advertise interview.
Not really supposed to.
Right, it's advertise and interview.
I would second that motion.
All right. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, next is public comment. We ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes in length, and they can be about any subject you wish.
William Bardell, 20-year resident. I just want to talk a little bit, a little food for thought. I've noticed recently we've talked a lot about. This is
It's on.
Okay. We've talked a lot about conserving water. I think this is a really good idea. And we heard this a lot from our new Department of Public Works chair lady. And, you know, sure, there might be a little bit of political theater, you know, watching the rain and watching the computers and, you know, if we have to dump into the Clinton River and everything. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy. I appreciate a little political theater. That's all fine. And I appreciate the fact that we're talking about conserving water. You know, don't, you know, do a full load of dishes, do a full load of laundry. You know, try not to, you know, take a long shower when you know it's gonna rain. I think this is great, great stuff. But I wanna talk a little bit about what's happening still. Well, what's still happening is we're still getting dumped on. Even though we've had great political theater about watching the charts and saying, boy, we dodged one, we sure didn't dump nothing in the Clinton River. Well, we got dumped on by our friends at the Martin Retention Basin on February 7th. And they dumped 17.1 million gallons of sewage on us, right into Lake St. Clair. So in case you're wondering why you got turds floating around at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club and a little turd barrier island forming out there, you're gonna know why. I like to remind everybody, once sewage goes into a retention basin, it gets dumped. It doesn't, after the rain event slows down or stops, it doesn't get pumped up, back up to the main and down to the Detroit wastewater treatment plant. This does not happen. Once the water goes to a retention basin system, it's dumped. We are paying for sewage to be treated. and we're getting dumped on. Still, in 2017, we're getting dumped on. As far as this interceptor goes, look on your water bill. We're all paying for this interceptor. So, we're gonna hear a lot about, transparency and accountability, but like some of the older guys say, I'm from Missouri, the show me state, show me. I'm gonna be expected to be seeing everything. And I will hold our new Public Works Director accountable. I will make sure, and we will make sure of that. I like her as a person, and I appreciate her talking about conserving water. The proof is gonna be in the pudding. We're gonna give her a fair shot. But we're still getting dumped on. And like our friend Candace said, stopping the dumping is job one, and that's what I wanna see. And that's what I hope everybody wants to see. So again, a lot of political theater, but we got dumped on at the Martin Detention Basin. Also, the 12 towns drains, they dumped on 2/7/2017, 41.45 gallons of sewage on us. Down to Red Run Drain, down to Clinton River and Lake St. Clair. So, again, political theater, but are we gonna go after 12 towns? These are gonna be questions I will be talking to Candace about. And we're gonna stay with the facts, and we're gonna look at this job one, and we're gonna see what happens. Again, we're paying for this, interceptor already. We're paying for sewage already on our water bill. And they're still dumping. So I'd like everybody to please check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook and get involved in some of this stuff. I know some of you guys talked about your clean water initiative. So I will be calling on you. I will be needing parade marshals coming up this spring. If we have to picket Candace's office, we'll do that. Whatever it takes, we're gonna do it. But first, I will meet with her, and we'll have a civil discussion. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, board members and residents.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Any board comment?
I got something here.
Okay.
The activity report for the sheriff's department,
Okay?
talk about this, right?
Sure. Anything you want?
Just going through the numbers, year-to-date, December 2016 numbers. Round numbers, we had about 776 sheriff-related calls, whether they were traffic, assault, non-assaults. Mr. Witt did clarify sort of what the non-assaults are. And I guess that would be like a breaking and entering and stuff like that. So just going through the numbers, then I went through the detective sheet on the cases that they were assigned. And I noticed that we had about approximately 151 non-assault property-related cases. Out of those 151, it appears, at least the way I read this, and probably incorrect, but it appears that one was assigned for breaking and entering. So they investigated one out of the 151. So these numbers are gonna continue to creep up, and I understand that the other night, our great sheriffs did catch 3 perpetrators that were breaking into everybody's vehicle over on North River Road, South River Road area. But that's not gonna get it done. So I'd like to know, statistically, when you look at the assault type incidents that occurred in December of 2016, there were 38, and out of those 38, 16 were assigned to a detective. So you look at less than 7% on the non-assault being assigned to detectives. How do we eliminate crime in our township when these are the numbers that, again, I may be looking at them wrong, but I would like to know why we're not investigating more.
Right, so let me address that a little bit. So let's talk about the difference between assault and let's call it smash and grab. if there's a call on an assault, there's little disputing that there's at least two people involved, and one person accuses the other, if not vice versa. So there's little question that an assault occurred and who the two individuals are. Now, obviously, one person can be lying, but 9 times out of 10, in other words, if you and I get into a fight, there's little disputing the fact that we had a fight, whether it be domestic or not.
Right.
If I call on you or you call on me, they're gonna be coming to me and they're gonna start asking questions. So they know the two individuals to talk to. When we talk about 151 incidents, when we talk about, say, non-assault type, we'll call it, again, petty, that's someone saying, hey, I got a call, someone, I can tell somebody came to my car, I saw footprints in the snow walking up, and they pulled on the door. On any given night, 1 or 2 individuals might do that to 30 cars, or 20 cars, or whatever that is. And they may never be caught, but they might be on a camera, they might be identified. Number 2, if they are identified, it isn't necessarily the detective bureau that's going through that process. So it could be, say, here's the information. I mean, so the comparison of those two is misleading if it suggests that the sheriff's department pays more attention to one kind than the other. By its very nature, not unique to Harrison Township, drug-driven smash and grabs are going to occur. You can't prevent them. You just can't. We could have 20 times the amount of sheriffs. They still wouldn't be in enough places at any given time. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't talk about other changes, but the ability to investigate a domestic dispute compared to, say, some other level of petty crime, and it's not petty when it happens to you, but ultimately when someone pulls on your door and takes your iPod or your cell phone out of your car, it's a crime of opportunity. Just watching social media and seeing the reports, almost every one of them has been an unlocked car. I think I saw one example of somebody smashing a glass and taking something, right? So it is deceiving, but as I'd offered, and admittedly, I know I haven't set that up yet, that's a good question to
Well, yeah, I mean,
direct to the
there's-
sheriff's office.
1,999 non-assault property in 2016. That's 5.5 a day. 5.5 a day. When you drive down North Point and your neighbor's Jeep's up on blocks, someone stole the rims. I know we can only be in so many places, and to your point,
Right.
Mr. Supervisor, as soon as the police drive by, that's usually when they probably strike. So I just, it concerns me because, there's a slight increase in some cases up from 2015 to 16. And I don't think the drug problem's gonna stop 2017. So we're gonna have to somehow figure out how to harness some of these numbers and.
Sure.
protect
Well,
our
and
residents.
you're absolutely right, and don't misinterpret my interpretation or expounding on those numbers to say that I'm opposed to that.
I know
I've
you're not.
heard from plenty of residents that they feel very similar to you in that regard. When it comes to making an effort to reduce that kind of crime, the first and best dollar that we can spend is slap some LEDs in your porch lights and in your street lights on your house and leave them suckers on all day and night if you can't remember and you can't put in a photo cell. But the more lights, lock your doors, eliminate that opportunity, and just keep your eyes peeled. I know that third one isn't necessarily so easy, but in many of the cases when I have had conversations with members of the Detective Bureau on repetitive crimes, it isn't that they don't have an idea how it happens, when it happens, where it happens, or even who's doing it. Just like any other industry or any other public service, we can talk about frequent flyers. They kind of have an idea, oh, well, this guy's been pretty clean, but boy, this looks just like, Bob Smith, who did this about 6 months ago. He must have been dry for a while or clean, and now he's back into it. So they even kind of have an idea. But they're not going to stop Bob Smith until they catch him. And 9 times out of 10, it's when someone says, why is that guy walking around? Or why is this happening? Or why is that happening? And they pay attention and they see something happen. And they call the sheriffs and they respond, well, it's in progress. I mean, that's almost always, with the exception of cameras, it's almost always how they catch these guys. So it's good, we should do something about it, but every resident should know they can do something about it with lights on your house. Keep your doors locked, and we just take some simple precautions, the silly things. My nephew's little 20-inch bicycle was stolen a few years ago, right off the front porch. I mean, you think, well, who's gonna steal them? I mean, the bike couldn't have been more than $90 brand new, you know? I mean, it wasn't some fancy ride, but it's an
Somebody was tired
opportunity.
of walking.
Yeah, well, or they thought they'd get, $3 for it in scrap because it was aluminum or something, I don't know, but the point is that, the first step, keep your lights on, your house lights on, keep the neighborhood lit up with LED lights that cost you pennies, and keep your eyes peeled, but we'll have that conversation.
I would believe that some of those 1,900 and change may be shoplifting.
Sure.
And I've seen, I shop at multiple stores, I do most of the shopping for us, and I see at least once a week, the police are out there, and sometimes they're even toting somebody into the car. Seen it at Kroger's before, I've seen it at Myers. It's a crime of opportunity, like you said, they steal stuff, and they may sell it to somebody for drug purposes.
Yeah,
But,
both on a limited sense and also on a professional sense. I knew a fellow was in the loss prevention, indicated that at one point, at least, when we had the conversation, baby formula, I mean, it's a 7-8 figure loss per year, knowing that they're watching for it just at Meijer, knowing that they're prepared for that level, they're still talking about millions or tens of millions in losses just in baby formula, because it's an organized, specifically, now we're talking about organized crime where folks are paid to go in and steal baby formula. So I'm sure some of that is that, but we'll expound on the discussion, so.
Thank you.
Any other board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
We talk about baby formula. My kids were preemies.
hey, where are you getting that information that they don't